Okay, so a good place to start would be a little bit for those that don't know Virtru, the company, a bit about the background, when, why formed, what you get up to. That would be good.
Yeah, Virtru is a company that was founded a decade ago by Will Ackerley, who was an engineer at the National Security Agency, and his brother John Ackerley, who was a policy director at the White House. Both of them were working in the U.S. government at a time when real concerns kind of came to sharp light with respect to how sensitive information was being shared or not being shared between different organizations. And Will, when he was at the NSA, invented a technology called trusted data format, and TDF as sort of the underlying technology invented at the NSA allowed for people to apply policies to very specific pieces of data so that it could be shared more effectively across organizational boundaries. And with that sort of as the essence of the company Virtru, Will left the NSA, and together with John, they founded Virtru. And the goal of the company from the very beginning was to basically create commercial applications that would allow people to take advantage of TDF, where people could apply policies to their data so they could share their data freely with others without sacrificing security, without sacrificing privacy, without sacrificing ownership. Because at the end of the day, ownership of data belongs to you, no one else. But also at the end of the day, data is fundamentally a part of the modern economy, and it has to be shared. So in order to be able to share freely and still retain control, you need something like TDF.
Okay, I was going to ask about that, but you've explained what TDF is in the answer to that. It's great. You have now launched the OpenTDF project. So I guess from the name, people might be able to have a hazard a guess at what it is, but perhaps you could outline it in more detail, what it is, the project, why it was set up, and what the objectives are.
Yeah. I mean, I think it's important to understand a couple of things. The TDF is the underlying technology, and Virtru is the company built on top of TDF. TDF itself is an open standard. It has been from inception hosted by the Office of the Director of National Intelligence. We, Virtru, the company, built the first commercial application on top of the OpenTDF standard nearly a decade ago. We've built a number of commercial applications on top of the TDF standard since. What we did recently, and we're very excited about, is take an extra step and to basically expose the power of TDF into a fully open project so that developers around the world now can come and take a very open, transparent look at the TDF capabilities as an open source project hosted in a GitHub repo with full documentation, full sample code. Anybody in the developer community can come and we invite them to come and look at TDF and sort of imagine how it might be useful for them as they develop their own software applications, if they are themselves, as a developer, interested in giving people the ability to control ownership of their data when they share it. That is something that TDF is uniquely positioned to do. And we like to say at Virtru, I mean, TDF itself is much bigger than Virtru, the company. I mean, we certainly intend to continue to build our business and leverage all of the power of TDF. But we think the issue of data sharing, data privacy, data security, data sovereignty is so much bigger than us, which is why we're really excited to have the OpenTDF project out there in the world. So every developer in the world, to the extent they're interested, can come and take a look at it, kick the tires, and see if it might be fit for purpose for their projects.
And in terms, I mean, it's early days, I guess, but in terms of the initial feedback, or I'm thinking maybe before you actually launched the project, part of the reason for doing so was you were getting inquiries and interest from developers. So just what does the community telling you in terms of this open project?
Yeah, I mean, listen, the community is at this early stage sending really positive signals. I think we're seeing really good engagement with the project. Admittedly, it's still early. There is a need. It's a fundamental need that exists in the world today to instill privacy in the digital economy, in the digital way of doing business. So much of our world now is data, personally identifiable information, GDPR information. Privacy is a thing all of a sudden. And when people start to care about privacy and people start to care about their data belonging to them and no one else, they're going to start to ask questions about how do they retain that ownership? How do they retain that data sovereignty? And the world, bigger than Virtru, is going to start to look to open standards to help answer these questions. And, we're not suggesting that TDF is the only possible way to solve this problem at all. We think there will be lots of innovation in this particular area, but we think OpenTDF is extremely well positioned to serve a really big role as the world continues to evolve and grapple with this fundamental question of how do you, in the modern economy, share your data with others in a way where you do not sacrifice security, ownership, or sovereignty over that data. And as long as we're in a position to help answer that question, we think OpenTDF is going to play an important role in the global development community in the years to come.
Okay, and in terms of these specifics, I'm wondering, are there particular use cases? I'm thinking maybe, around zero trust in the security space is a big thing at the moment. Is that a play for OpenTDF? And are there any other sort of potential use cases that you're sort of pushing out there as some obvious ones that developers, people might want to look at and go, yep, that makes a lot of sense?
Yeah, listen, the use cases for TDF are I won't say endless, but they are very broad. TDF is a policy wrapper that can be applied to very granular pieces of data, both unstructured and structured. Now, to be completely clear, that is a very big landscape. On a practical level, where we've seen really good use cases of TDF being sort of applied in the real world, of course, involve things like email encryption, file encryption, SaaS application workflows. And these are all the things that Virtru does commercially as a business. But on the open side of the TDF project, there are lots of compelling use cases coming to the forefront around, personally identifiable information like health records for HIPAA use cases. Things like document control, things like digital rights management, things like sensor data in an IoT use case. When we have more and more and more machine identities in the world today called sensors, and these machine identities on these sensors are sending information back and forth in the wake of things like Colonial Pipeline last year, what we know is that there's a use case for TDF in encrypting data that's moving back and forth between IoT sensors as well as human-generated information. So these are some examples of where we see TDF interest emergent, and we think will continue to evolve over time.
And I'm just wondering, as you answered that, our good old friend blockchain, I'm guessing that you'd see that perhaps as a complementary technology, so that sort of secures the integrity of transactions, if you like, throughout the supply chain, and your technology is ensuring the integrity of the bits of information within that supply chain. Is that right?
Yeah, trust me, we think a lot about the blockchain. We think a lot about Web3. We think a lot about that world as it's emergent itself. What we do at Virtru as a corporation and what OpenTDF does as an open project is pretty simplistic at the end of the day. We're giving people and software developers and organizations, quite frankly, the ability to apply granular controls to data as it moves in and out of a wide variety of workflows. And that control takes different shape depending upon different use cases. The control that's available via the OpenTDF project is foundational to the data object. We at Virtru, as a commercial enterprise, we do additional types of governance and controls that involve things like federating identity access to the data policy control. So it's one thing to apply policy to a particular data object. It's another thing to federate policy access to the data object as well, so that you share the data object with someone else. And then you also assert that only certain individuals who authenticate against a certain piece of encrypted data can then access that particular piece of data. Now, those are commercial implementations of TDF that Virtru's taken to market, but the foundational substrate of OpenTDF is absolutely relevant today. We also believe extremely relevant as Web3 and the blockchain continues to kind of take shape in the broader economy.
And in terms of the, I think you alluded to it in one of your answers. I mean, clearly the digital world we're in, data explosion, etc. I'm just wondering how you see the balance. Clearly, there are various sets of legislation, whether they're, for individual industries, regional, national, international, that stuff. And then there's the technology itself. How do you, if it's possible at all even, how do you see that, the twin development, if you like, of legislation and then the technology to underpin it, or is it the other way around? I mean, it seems to me, I won't say it's the Wild West, but it's a massive area that a lot of uncertainty at the moment, I guess.
Yeah, listen, that's a great question. And I would be lying to you if I told you I have the answers. I don't. We definitely have opinions and we have a voice in this conversation. Just 2 weeks ago, we were out at RSA and I had the great fortune to moderate a panel with Michelle Flournoy, former Assistant Secretary of Defense, and Michael Chertoff, the former Secretary of Homeland Security, talking about this idea of borderless data and data sovereignty. We're now living in a world, the New York Times just 2-3 weeks ago wrote an article called The End of Borderless Data, where something like 50 countries around the world have now passed laws asserting that data that originates within those countries is sovereign to the country, to the citizen, to the taxpayer. And this idea that data ownership matters and is sovereign in the context of, a nation state begs really important questions like, okay, so how do nation states share data with other nation states? And how do they do it in a way where they can be effective coalition partners if they happen to be part of an organization like NATO? How do they do it in the context of sharing information with other nation states where they might be more competitive on a global stage, like, I don't know, the US and the UK and China? These are super important foundational questions that I think will only get answered when the world has the benefit of an open standard. And the open standard is yet to be determined. We believe that OpenTDF is very well positioned to become that standard. We clearly have work to do in order to kind of establish it as such. But the more people that take a look at OpenTDF, the more people that understand TDF, the more we think that there's a clear picture that emerges that TDF is capable of supporting this new world order that we all see coming in super clear terms as we sit here today.
Okay, and in terms of Virtru yourselves, clearly you've done a lot of work in this area, but I'm just wondering whether it's to the sort of points you've just made or whatever, what can we expect from you? Obviously the project's launched, you do commercial solutions yourselves. Where would you see the company? Are you waiting for everyone else to catch up, or are there other things you want to be doing to make sure you stay ahead, or where are you at?
Yeah, I mean, I think the easiest way to think about Virtru, the commercial enterprise built on top of TDF, is to imagine like Brinks Security, the guys that have the armored trucks and the armored guards that are basically moving paper money around inside of a physical economy. We do something very, very similar for digital information moving around inside of a virtual economy, right? And so in that sense, we're sort of the Brink security for data that's constantly in motion, moving in and out of businesses every single day, faster than you can blink. And we intend to continue to develop products that allow us to sort of grow and scale our commercial business. Our primary sort of line of business in that regard is email encryption and end-to-end security for things like Google Workspace and Office 365. We've developed a variety of compelling use cases and products around file sharing applications. We've developed some really good governance around data moving in and out of SaaS applications. And we continue to work to sort of imagine other places that we can build commercial implementations of data governance, data control that lend themselves to the zero trust security transformation that's currently happening. And so, yeah, we think zero trust is a big part of our future as a commercial enterprise. And I imagine zero trust in its own way is probably a big part of the future of the OpenTDF project as well. I mean, if we stop and just think about it, I mean, zero trust, I think there's so much confusion and noise out there right now around it. You know, I like to simplify things to the best of my ability. I think about in the old worlds of the IT industry, people had houses and they would lock the front door and the back door, and they would put all of their applications, all of their systems, all of their data inside of the house. And if you had a username and password, you could come in and have access to everything. Then people started to realize, well, owning a house is kind of expensive. It might be better to put systems and applications and data into hotel rooms. We could rent a lot of hotel rooms, and our data and our applications and our systems could be distributed inside of these things called public cloud infrastructures. And that would be less expensive and easier to manage, and not a bad idea. But then all of a sudden, the fundamental definition of how do you secure it has changed. Like architecturally, the world changes overnight when you move to public cloud infrastructure or even hybrid cloud infrastructure. And so from our perspective, we see data being sort of the foundational level of control, like the molecular unit that we as an industry need to control inside of this new architectural reality called cloud everything, called zero trust security transformation, is the data object. And you know, if you think about it in those terms, we see a great opportunity for Virtru as a commercial enterprise, and we see a great opportunity for OpenTDF as a standard to support the world as it continues to evolve.
And just quickly then, in terms of your presence, are you a truly global organization now? Do you have plans to roll out in other, you know, where are you at? And again, is it a channel model? Do you go direct to market? How does all that work?
Yeah, I mean, so you know, we have 7,000 plus customers. You know, the vast majority of them are certainly domestic U.S., but we have an international presence as well that's you know, well established and growing. We absolutely sell direct and through the channel. We have a very strong strategic partnership with Google. We're the recommended encryption partner for Google Workspace. We you know, ultimately spend a lot of time, you know, supporting customers in a couple of key verticals where there's real regulatory and compliance requirements that in the United States would imply things like healthcare and HIPAA. That would imply things like education. That would imply things like financial services and banking. But where there's sensitivity with respect to data, where there's policy compliance and regulatory drivers around data security and data privacy, we definitely see opportunity not just for Virtru as a commercial enterprise and have sort of built our business there. We also see that being sort of emergent opportunity for the OpenTDF project as well.
Okay, and maybe then just promise finally, in terms of folks who want to find out a bit more about the OpenTDF, is there a place to go? I mean, do they come to you initially, or and what sort of resources are there? Are there sort of, let's say, recommended use cases, any project? What sort of resources are available for folks to have a look at?
Yeah, I mean, so first of all, there's Virtru.com is a great place to start, and there's a really easy sort of to navigate developer experience, which points you directly to the OpenTDF GitHub repo. where you'll have access to SDKs and documentation, use cases, all of the typical accoutrements that would give a developer sort of a starting place to kind of grind their sword and see where they might want to take sort of something like the OpenTDF project to support a need or scratch an itch. That's where you go, virtru.com, and right from there you can easily access the OpenTDF GitHub repo and see what you think. And to the extent that you're interested, we'd love to have you engage with the project. That's why we're open, and that's why we're so excited about continuing to support the project alongside of a global community.
Excellent. Well, Matt, it's been lovely to chat to you today, so I really appreciate your time. Thank you very much indeed. Thank you.